Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin on this blustery, overcast, stormy Cape Town morning. My favorite weather, let me just be honest with you on that. This is my favorite weather. I love this weather. So you will get no complaints from me during winter. Good morning, Jen. Lovely to see you, my friend. Good morning. You will get no complaints from me during winter because I love this weather. This is my favorite weather. I have to be honest, it is my favorite weather to stay at home, not necessarily to have to go out there. But good morning, beautiful Bertha. Lovely to see you. And also, where we live, I think the weather is often worse than it is elsewhere in Cape Town. Good morning, Renee. So I don't know what it's like in the northern suburbs, Bertha, in Durbanville. Maybe it's better there, but it's very, very stormy and windy and overcast here in the southern suburbs on the mountain. It's very... Yes, we need to pray for lots of rain for the Eastern Cape. We definitely do. We definitely do. Yeah. Our nation needs lots of prayer for lots of things. And is it? Wow, okay. No, it's not at all. Good morning, Tessa. Lovely to have you on. Lovely to have mom and daughter on. So what a privilege to have mother and daughter on this morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Good to have you all. And lovely to have you all. My goodness, do you think I'll ever get completely comfortable in this space? I just don't know. If I sit a certain way, then that light above my head looks like I have a halo. I just can't find a perfect space within our new space where I feel completely comfortable doing these lives. I don't know what it is. This morning I was praying and I was just saying to the Lord, has the grace lifted for these lives? Like, has the grace lifted? Good morning, Karen. Lovely to see you. Has the grace lifted for these lives? Because I don't know why. I know, but it's I don't know. It probably looks a little bit weird, and I don't know. I just don't seem to be able to get the lighting right. And then every single day the lighting changes and it looks different. And I know that I seem to spend an inordinate amount of time complaining to you ladies. So my sincere apologies for that. But I really try. And it doesn't seem to work for me. So anyway, it is what it is at the moment, and I'm doing what I can. So excuse the halo. I don't know how else to position myself to not have it. And maybe if I move, there we go, that's probably a little bit better. Maybe that is a little bit better. I know it does keep one on one's toes, Jen, but I don't really want to be on my toes right now. I want to be just, Anyway, good morning, ladies. It is lovely to see all of you this morning on this cold and blustery Cape Town morning. Wherever you are watching from and wherever you are, I hope you are warm and safe and blessed. And I want to really kind of leap into this morning's good morning, Natalie. Thank you, my friends. Thank you so much, my word. Okay, I wasn't looking for compliments. Okay, really, I wasn't looking for compliments. I was just sorry. I've got something in my eye as well, which just is bothering me. Feels like either an eyelash or makeup or something. I don't want to be rubbing my eye throughout the whole entire broadcast, but just feels a bit odd to me. So I thank you, yes, my beautiful community of ladies. If you would like and share, I would much appreciate it. It's amazing. I look at these videos, these broadcasts, and I don't even understand. I don't know anything about Facebook algorithms and things like that. I know nothing about those things. So I do the lives and I share it on YouTube and I share it on Instagram, and that's the limit of what I do. I'm busy getting finances in to redo my website. That's a whole nother long story. We won't go there, but I'm busy doing that. So at the moment, my website is not being updated, but so that's my thing. I do Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then I don't even look at them again. But but obviously people comment like afterwards, and then I go back and, because I like to acknowledge people's comments. And every now and again, I'll see a video, a broadcast that's been shared like 25 times, and I'm just like, wow, wow, why? Like, not why, but like, why that particular one? I don't know, but obviously there's some that just resonate with people and they just get shared millions of times. But thank you for liking and sharing. Journal. Oh, my book. Is that what you're talking about, Bertha? My book. Yes, no, my book is in the works. It is happening. Thank you for asking, my friend. My devotional journal is busy. The lady, this incredible woman, is busy editing and illustrating. So for those of you who don't know, it is my 40-day devotionals that I sent out via email on the women in the Bible. So it will be more than a trilogy because they're 40-day devotionals. It's going to starting from Eve, and we're going to go right through the women in the Bible. So they're going to be like loads of devotionals, but we're starting with just the first 40. And so this incredible woman that I have met is busy. She is editing them, so it's going to be a devotional. So the one page will be a devotional, and on the other page will be a space where you can journal. And she is also an illustrator, so she's illustrating little pictures, not huge enormous things, but just decorating the page, if you can call it that, so that you can not only journal but you can also color in. So it's a space where you can, because there are little activations at the end of every devotional, so you can do your activation with the Lord, and then you can journal what God has told you or showed you, and then you can color in or you can do whatever. So that is in the work. She is busy editing all of that. She is also busy designing a cover, and we will soon, I don't know how soon exactly, but she has told me soon. So I'm imagining, within the next sort of month or so, we will be open for pre-orders. So you will be able to pre-order, and then the launch will happen on Women's Day. So that is in August. I know that feels like a very long time away, but it isn't actually that far away, because we all know how quickly time goes. And so the launch will be in August, but we're going to have an event. There will be an event, and it will be and then we will do a launch of the devotional / journal, and it is going to be amazing. It's going to be something that you will buy. For those of you who have received my 40-day devotionals, I've had so many women from all around the world, and this is not boasting, please understand me, this is just me just sharing with you. I've had women from all around the world message me and say to me how impacted they were by those devotionals, and by the insight that they gleaned into the women in the Bible, and how impacted they were by how many significant women there are in the Bible, how many women of significance there are in the Bible, apart from just the usual Deborahs and Esthers and those sorts of things. So that is all in the works, ladies. The moment the books are ready for pre-order, I will let you know, and you will get first dibs at the pre-ordered copies, and then they will be brilliant for Mother's Day presents, birthday presents, Christmas presents, and you can give them to anybody, because they're across the board. What I mean by that is that whether you are friends with people within denominations or friends with people, in the more sort of charismatic Pentecostal streams, whatever, even non-believers, because a lot of a lot of the information is very it's very historical. So really, your mom, your granny, your daughter, if you know anyone who's who has an issue with the Bible just because of the way women are represented, that devotional is going to break women free. And that's not because I wrote it, that is because it was God inspired. So there are two, because there's one that will be released in August, and then we'll get started on the next one, because I've written more than 80, but I've got 80 ready, and then I will start on the next 40. So good morning, Jessie. So yes, thank you for reminding me, Bertha, but I will keep you all updated. But that is happening, and I'm trusting that once we have the setup all sorted, and we have the first one done and dusted, then the others will roll out. Yes, Jenny and Jessie, my two beautiful ladies who are birthing the future. So Jessie is about to birth the future, and Jenny is birthing the future in August, I think she said. So Jenny and Jessie, our two precious ladies on here, birthing the future, birthing the next generation of revivalists, reformationists, transformationists, all of those things. Amazing. Men who are going to carry the anointing to bring the world to Jesus. Amen. Okay, now you distracted me, Bertha. I want to leap into, so I thought we were done with the book of Esther. I was wanting to be done with the book of Esther, but we're not yet. For those of you who are over the book of Esther, I apologize. But this morning when I was sitting with the Lord, I just felt like there have been so many of you reaching out to me, just in, who have been so many of you who have reached out to me, who have been so impacted by the teachings on Esther and the whole story about destiny and purpose. But so many of you who have also reached out to me, who have just been like, I don't know, I'm stuck, I don't understand, I don't feel like, I feel like I've had these words and all of this kind of thing, and I don't know what actually is going on, etc., etc. And I really just, I'm sorry, I know I'm sort of glancing around, but that is because I'm looking for my Bible and I cannot find it. Oh, okay, wait, here we go. I want to actually just decree and declare a scripture over you before we start. For those of you who just feel, and you might have, if you read my post the other day on Kaya, then you might have actually seen this verse, but this verse God has been speaking this verse over and over and over to me, and I want to read it over you. Psalm 12 verse 6. The words and promises of the Lord are pure words, like silver refined in an earthen furnace, purified 7 times. Ladies and gentlemen, the words and promises of the Lord over you. Understand this, the words and promises that come from God over you, not the words and promises that have been spoken over you that aren't from God, or the words and promises that you have heard that maybe aren't God's words, but the words and promises that are from God over you are pure words. And they are like silver refined in an earthen furnace, purified 7 times. Good morning, Martha. So what God is saying is He releases a word and a promise over you. But that word and that promise goes through a process where it is refined, sometimes 7 times, until it is purified like silver. And whilst that word and that promise is being purified like silver, you and I are being purified like silver, because that word and that promise, for that word and that promise to come to pass within us, that we are being being purified like silver. So for some of us, we are right on the edge. We are standing on what feels like a cliff face, about to leap into the destiny that God has for us. For some of us, we feel like we are on the edge of that wave that is about to break and catapult us in to that destiny that is upon us. For some of us, that is where we are, and yet we just don't seem to be able to cross over. There is something that we feel that is holding us back, and we don't know why, and we start to doubt the words and the promises of God that have been spoken over us. We start to doubt what it is that we've walked through. We start to feel as though the things that we have walked through are winning. The battles that we have fought are winning, and we are losing, even though we know that God is the ultimate victor. And because God is the ultimate victor, we ultimately win. We feel like we are on the losing side. And I want to take one last look. Well, I'm trusting it will be one last look at the book of Esther, because we are in this period of time, and because I have seen, ladies, if I could tell you this morning the testimonies of women that I have received over this time. Literally, somebody who I met with the other day, who literally on Purim, on the day of Purim, on the day of the festival of Esther, the feast of Esther, she stepped into her destiny. It happened. It's the most incredible testimony, and I will ask her permission to share it with you one day. But if I could tell you the battle that this woman walked through to get there, not a month battle, not a moment's battle, not even the battle has been intense for the last year, but it hasn't even been a year's battle. But if I can tell you the calling on this woman's life, what she is stepping into and what she is going to bring in terms of the economy of our nation and the finances of our nation, and not just our nation, but our continent, what the calling on her life to bring, what she is going to bring in that sphere, and what the destiny God has for her. And this is just the first step. This isn't the fullness of her destiny. This is the first step. But if I can tell you the battle that she has walked through, the doubt that she walked through last year, where she just thought, no, maybe she's missed it completely. And on Purim, on the feast of Esther, it happened. And literally, she walked through the battle for I don't know how long, but the suddenly of God happened, and in a moment, and within a situation and a circumstance where suddenlies are not known to happen. Let me just say it like that. So I want to just summarize the book of Esther for you. I'm summarizing it, and it's not hot today, okay? It's quite chilly and the wind is howling. So this heat that I'm feeling now, this is the Holy Spirit. And literally this morning I was saying to God, no, come on, Esther, are we not done with Esther yet? And God was like, no, there are things that people need to know still about the book of Esther. Okay, I have the Message Bible in front of me. I know not everyone loves the Message translation, but sometimes it's just the most succinct translation. It just gets straight to the point. And you know, ladies, how I insist with all of you that you read different translations. Read different translations. Don't only stick to one translation. Read a whole lot of translations, ladies. Learn as much about the word as you possibly can so that you are not deceived. Okay, right. Let's move swiftly on. Otherwise, I'm going to digress. I can feel the digressions happening in my brain, even as I say that. There's so many things I want to tell you right now, but I'm going to save them for another time. Remind me. Okay, so here we stand at the beginning of the book of Esther. We have King Xerxes, we have Queen Vashti, we have Mordecai, and we have Hadassah. Right. Okay. We have King Xerxes, violent, short-tempered, probably an alcoholic, autocratic, despotic, probably not a very nice person. We have Queen Vashti, and we don't know much about her, but we do know that eventually she was just over the whole thing and she just refused to do what he asked her to do. Okay, we don't know why. Then Vashti's gone. We have Mordecai and Hadassah. We know that Mordecai has taken on Hadassah. Hadassah's an orphan. They are Jewish people. They live in Persia. They are exiles from their own land. Mordecai, has cared for Hadassah. He has loved her as his own. All of those things, amazing, wonderful. Vashti is deposed in order to, calm Xerxes' temper. All beautiful girls in the kingdom are rounded up and taken off to his harem, so he gets to choose one to be queen. Hadassah is taken, and in the period of a year of beautification and all sorts of things, Hadassah becomes Esther, and Esther becomes queen. And we all know that that was not a beautiful beauty pageant love story, that was actually, that what we all know what that would be called if that happened today, and how the outcry that would invoke if it had happened today. But we know, so this is all that has happened. Okay, so in all of these things, what is happening in Persia? Because I want you to look at this in terms of, I want you to put this story in terms of the world around us. Okay, like see this in terms of today's world. Okay, so what is happening in Persia? There are ordinary Jews going about their ordinary day, living an ordinary life. So what happens if you don't live in the capital of Susa, if you don't live in the palace grounds, which is what it says where Mordecai lived? You know, it says, where does it say here? There was a Jew who lived in the palace complex in Susa. So he was obviously worked for the king, or worked in the palace, or worked somewhere. This is Mordecai, okay? But there were other Jews who lived far off, you know, who lived in little communities further away in Persia, who they would have heard the news. They would have heard that Vashti was deposed. They would have seen the soldiers probably combing the countryside for beautiful girls, and girls would have been taken. But none of those things would have directly impacted them. You know, they would have heard probably that this Jewish girl Hadassah had been taken, and they would have heard it through the Jewish grapevine, but Hadassah kept her Jewishness a secret. Okay, so they would have heard the news, but none of it would have impacted them directly. So their lives were going on as per normal. You know, we read the story like, oh my goodness, but there were people who were living through these things unaffected. And it's much like today. There are people getting trafficked all the time. There are children getting sold into sex slavery. You know, there's stuff going on all around us. How do most of us live our lives? Unaffected. We go on as if, you know, nothing's happening until it directly impacts us, right? Is that not just human nature? Okay, so here we go. And so there goes Esther. She becomes, there goes Hadassah, she becomes Esther. Esther falls in love with her. Xerxes falls in love with her as far as he possibly can. For who he is, he's totally smitten by her, according to the message. And he hands out gifts with royal generosity and does all of these things. Okay, Mordecai keeps in touch with Esther. You know, he keeps in touch with her, even right through this year's process of, you know, beautification and all of that kind of thing. And understand that in the year's process, Esther finds favor. So she is very, what she does with her situation, she's not bemoaning and bewailing and complaining and grumbling and everything. She finds favor in her situation. So God's hand is on her, even though God is never mentioned in the story. God's hand is clearly on her. You can see that. And she finds favor in her situation. And then, so this is Esther chapter 2. And then we told just this like arbitrary story in the middle of everything. You just told this arbitrary story about these two eunuchs who happen to be plotting to assassinate the king, and Mordecai happens to overhear them, and he happens to tell Esther, and Esther tells Xerxes, and the two eunuchs are the story is investigated, and the eunuchs are put to death. And it's like a little side note in the story of Esther, just the story of these two eunuchs, and it's just a side note. Okay, like put to the one side. And what also strikes me about that particular bit is that Esther didn't need like special permission to approach Xerxes at that point. There was no like, if I perish there. Okay, she just got to go and tell Xerxes that there were two men plotting to kill him. I don't know. Was it because right then she was like, you know, because it says, you know, on one of the occasions when the virgins were being gathered together, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. And then these two eunuchs guarded the entrance and heard them making plans to tell the king. And Mordecai learns of the plot and tells Esther, and then Esther tells Xerxes and gives the credit to Mordecai. But how does Esther tell Xerxes? Was she, by the time the whole thing happened with Haman, had Esther already, because she says there that she hasn't seen Xerxes for a month, like, has she already fallen in favor? Remember what I said about Esther not dying but sacrificing her life? So, he's smitten by her. The two eunuchs are plotting to kill him. She seems to have immediate access to him in that space. By the time Haman's plotting to kill the Jews, she doesn't have immediate access to him anymore. I'm just saying. I just wanted to point that out. Already things have shifted. Just so that you have an understanding of Esther's picture-perfect queenly life that we all imagine in our own heads, or the way movies portray it, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so there's this little weird story just stuck there. Okay, we know, because we know the story, how it works out, but I'm making a point here. I'm going to get to my point, I promise. Now, here we go, and Xerxes promotes Haman, okay? And Haman, everyone has to kneel before him. Here, Mordecai's Jewish. The Jews don't kneel before anybody except God, right? Mordecai won't kneel before Haman because he only kneels before God, okay? But hello, Christians, we only kneel before Jesus, right? Yeah, we're not supposed to kneel before anything else. Okay, so, and they go on, and Haman, just because Haman, what does Haman need? He needs validation, he needs affirmation, he needs people to kneel before him, he needs to feel important, he needs all of these things, and Mordecai will not kneel before him. Now, where does Haman come from? Haman is the son of Hammedatha, an Agagite. Where do the Agagites come from? Well, if we go back to 1 Samuel 15, there is a story in 1 Samuel 15 about King Saul, where the favor of God left King Saul was when King Saul was supposed to kill all the Amalekites. And do you remember that there was a king Agag, and Saul didn't kill him? In fact, Saul was supposed to wipe out all the Amalekites, all the sheep, all the cows, all the everything. And Samuel comes to Saul. If you go back and read it, Samuel comes to Saul, and he says, "What is that noise I hear in the background? The bleating and the mooing." And Saul's like, "No, I just saved the best to sacrifice to the Lord." And Samuel's like, "That wasn't what God said." And so historians believe, scholars believe, that somewhere where Saul was supposed to slaughter all the Amalekites, and where Samuel then kills King Agag, but that out of those people were allowed to escape, or people did escape, or maybe some of the women escaped, or some historians or scholars even argue that Agag's wife or one of his concubines escaped, and they then formed a people called the Agagites. And so because of Saul's failure to fulfill the command of God, to be obedient to the command of God, all of these years later, that disobedience comes back to haunt the Jewish people here in Persia under King Xerxes. But God is now going to make the wrong right once and for all. So again, the story of Esther is a typology of the story of Jesus, where God uses Jesus to right the wrongs once and for all. Where all of the things and all of the disobedience and all of the sin and all of the stuff that was supposed to be done over all of the years, God is like, "I'm sending my son. He's going to make it right once and for all." So that was the consequences of disobedience are generations long. Generations long. So there was that. Okay, so here we have Saul's disobedience rearing its ugly head centuries down the line, and a whole lot of people living in blissful ignorance. So Haman's completely outraged, and so he doesn't want to just kill he doesn't want to just kill Mordecai. He now wants to kill all the Jews. Because what happens here? This is a generations long enmity. Okay, so this is not, remember, we do not war against flesh and blood. We war against powers and principalities. So what happens? Here is Haman, descendant of a people who were supposed to be wiped out by the Israelites in obedience to God generations ago. Here is Mordecai, a Jew, okay? Here is Mordecai who will not bow his knee to anybody but his God. Here is this people, okay? What happens? This is not a flesh and blood battle. This is a power and principalities battle. What immediately rears its head? What spirit steps up into that space? Racism? Anti-Semitism? Genocide? All of those spirits now, they rear their ugly heads up in Haman. They're like, "No, don't take this. Come on, let's do something. Here is an opportunity to wipe out the Jews." Bearing in mind that Satan is always looking out for an opportunity to wipe out the Jews, because he knows that they are God's chosen people. He doesn't understand the whole thing about the Messiah, but he knows there is a chosen one coming through the line of David at some point, and any opportunity that he gets to try and wipe out the Jews, he is going to do so. So here we go. Here comes anti-Semitism. Here comes racism. Here comes genocide. Here come all of these spirits, and they all raise their, good morning, Julie. They all raise their heads in Haman, because here we go, and now it is not flesh and blood. It is powers and principalities, as it says, as Paul says in the New Testament. We are not fighting flesh and blood, we are fighting powers and principalities. And these powers and principalities are now raising their heads within Haman, and they are now preparing to not just wipe out one Jew, as in Mordecai, but a whole nation of Jewish people. Okay, so moving swiftly on. Haman goes to Xerxes. Xerxes couldn't care less. He doesn't know Esther's Jewish. And even if he had known that Esther was Jewish, I don't think it would have made any difference. But here he gives his permission, and they're all going to be wiped out. And the command goes out across the kingdom. What happens now? Good morning, Tanya. What happens now is that now all the Jewish people are affected. So all of those Jewish people who went about their business, not interested in the fact that Vashti had been deposed, not interested in the fact that Hadassah had been taken from her home, and now she'd been made Esther, and now she'd been made queen, not interested in anything else that had been happened, not interested in Mordecai's fate, the fact that he wouldn't bow to Haman, not interested in any of that because it didn't immediately affect them. Now suddenly they were all immediately affected by what is happening, and because now they are all going to be put to death, basically. So suddenly now there is a nation within a nation in an uproar. So now this is, and they all know that they have a hero, basically, and they're all going to be put to death and all of their stuff taken. So now there's a whole nation in an uproar. Now here comes Mordecai. Now remember what I've said to you before. When you get anyone who's been, if like us, okay, as women, when you get someone who's been put in a position, who God is elevating into a position as, shall we say, queen, I mean, not literal queen, but into a position of authority, into a position of, then you have someone who is the queen maker. You have someone who has supported that person, prayed for that person, interceded for that person, pushed that person forward, been the person who is there. So some of us are called to be queens. Some of us are called to be queen makers. Some of us have seasons where we walk as queens. Some of us have seasons where we walk as queen makers. Just because you're a queen maker doesn't mean you will never be a queen. But we need to be gracious and understand the season that we are in and what we are called to be in specific times. We cannot complain about being a queen maker because we want to be queen. We need to fulfill the role that God has called us to be. Mordecai was called to be a queen maker. He was there for Esther every step of the way. He supported her, he encouraged her, and he told her the brutal, honest truth when she needed to be told it. And what happened at the end of the day, he was the one who was elevated and actually given an authority, second in command to Xerxes, over the kingdom. Whereas Esther had the crown, but as a woman in the kingdom, she didn't actually have very much authority. And as we already know, she lived as a virtual prisoner for most of her life. That is not obviously going to be our life story as queens now today in God's kingdom. But I'm just saying that some of us are called to be queen makers. We are called to be the power behind the throne. We are called to be the people who support the people who get to occupy those positions of power and authority. And some of us don't like that because we want to be queen. We can't all be queen. There are seasons where we're called to be queen. There are seasons where we're called to be queen maker. We need to be humble enough to recognize which season we're walking in. And we need to be humble enough to be okay with being the queen maker and not being the queen. Because believe you me, without the queen maker in the story of Esther, there wouldn't have been a queen. Without Mordecai, there wouldn't have been an Esther. That role is just as important. And it will be just as rewarded in eternity. And you might feel on earth like you are not seen and you are not validated and you are not affirmed, but we are not here for earthly rewards. We are here for heavenly rewards. We are not here to see how much validation, affirmation, and confirmation we can receive on earth. We are here to do our Father's bidding so that when we step into eternity, we hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So, some of us need to go before God and ask him, are we called to be queens? Are we called to be queen maker? And if it is our season to be queen maker, we need to accept that and walk in that with excellence and integrity. So here we go. Mordecai steps into full fasting mode, fasting, weeping, wailing, sackcloth, ashes. Esther comes and says, what on earth is going on? He tells Mordecai, sends the servants, the servant goes back and forth, and Mordecai tells her, and then he basically says to her, if God will raise a deliverer if you don't do this, but you will not be spared. And he says, don't think that just because you live in the king's house, you're the one Jew who will get out of this alive. If you persist in staying silent at a time like this, help and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from someplace else, but you and your family will be wiped out. Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for just such a time as this. This is from the Message translation. And then Esther sends back her answer to Mordecai and says, I will go to the king, even though it's forbidden. If I die, I die. And Esther approaches the king, and he accepts her, and the favor is on her, the favor of God is on her, and she doesn't immediately blurt out her request. She invites him and Haman to her house for dinner, and they come and they're drinking, and she obviously, she gets him there, and they're having dinner and they're drinking and everything's obviously comfortable and wonderful. And she doesn't even then blurt out her request. She instead, when he says to her, I will give you half my kingdom. I will give you half my kingdom, he says to her. And she says, you know what? Will you come again tomorrow? I don't want to tell you now. Will you come again tomorrow? And maybe it seems a little bit like overkill, but I think she was making absolutely sure that Haman was completely unsuspecting, that the king was completely comfortable, that everything was completely, everything was, and that she had time. She hadn't seen the queen for ages. So she was making sure that everything between her and the king was comfortable and good. And Haman was like, I am so favored that I am like, sorted. I've been to the queen's palace not just once but twice now. I've been invited. And then that Mordecai ignores Haman. Haman gets completely furious. He goes to his friends and his wife, and they all say to him to erect this enormous gallows, and that's what he does. And then that night the king can't sleep, and so he gets the Chronicles of the Kingdom read to him, and lo and behold, the servant reads the story of Mordecai saving him from the two eunuchs who happened to be plotting to kill him. And the king's like, wow, did anyone ever actually, was he ever compensated for that? Did anyone ever, reward him for saving my life? And the guy was like, no, actually that wasn't done. And the king's like, first thing in the morning, we need to sort that out. The first person he sees in the morning is a man coming to tell him that he wants to kill Mordecai. And the king's like, me first. What would you do to honor someone? Haman thinks it's him, obviously, especially because they'd spent the night before dining with Queen Esther. And of course comes up with this incredible plan to honor. And then the king is like, honor Mordecai. And Haman is forced to honor Mordecai in the way that he would like to be honored. Ladies and gentlemen, God is a God of vindication. Sometimes that vindication takes a long time, but you will be vindicated. If honor has been stolen from you, if you have been dishonored, if that has been you, and you have had a Haman in your life that has sought to steal, kill, and destroy your reputation, God is a God of vindication. There will be a vindication. It might not look exactly like Mordecai's, and it might not look the way you think it should look, but there will be a reckoning, and there will be a vindication. And here comes Haman, and Haman has to honor Mordecai in this space. And then not only that, but then they go back for dinner. And here comes the Esther starts to tell King Xerxes about this whole entire story. And she's like, oh, wow. Like, here we go. This is what Haman has planned. And the king is raging because he's this clearly incredibly short-tempered man and drinks way too much. And he storms off into the palace garden. Anger management desperately needed here, no control over his emotions. And Haman actually is groveling at Esther's feet, and the king comes back. He's so blinded with rage, he thinks Haman is now assaulting Queen Esther. But just put yourself in Queen Esther's place. She is begging for the lives of her nation, not just her life, the lives of her nation. She has now spoken about a plot that the king's right-hand man has put against her nation. She has no definite security in the fact that the king will take her side. She doesn't know that he will. He is very volatile. He is not known for making logical, rational, analytical decisions. He goes off to war. If you read the history of King Xerxes, in history books, he goes off to war at the drop of a hat based on nothing. And he doesn't like to be challenged. So he's not he's not a rational man, okay? So she doesn't know he's going to choose her side at all. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't even say, oh, no, this is terrible. He stands up and storms out. He could have been storming out because he was upset with her, not just upset with her man. She doesn't know the answer yet. He hasn't told her. She's sitting there, and now her man throws himself at her. Just picture this. The king walks back in, and the king thinks her man is assaulting her. How does Esther feel? If it says her man is groveling at her feet, he's throwing himself at her. What does that look like? Has he thrown himself on her lap? Is he pulling on her? Is he holding on her? Is he begging and pleading with her? The king is outside. Don't know where the servants are. Is she in fear for her life? Does she think he's going to assault her? If the king thinks he's assaulting her, does she think he's assaulting her? Do we know what she's even feeling in this moment? Does she think this hasn't worked? I'm lost. The king has stormed off. He could right now be calling the servants to get rid of me. She doesn't know that he's chosen her side. She doesn't know. He hasn't said a word. He's just stormed out in anger. Not a word. He exploded. He asked who the monster is, and then he storms out. Sometimes we are right there, right on the edge of our destiny. And the enemy launches what feels like a final assault that is going to take us out. We are sitting in that final moment, and we are just like, this is it. I am done. This is never going to work. My people are lost. I am lost. And then he comes back in, and he's like, will he even molest the queen when I'm just around the corner? And with that, when that word left the king's mouth, all the blood drained from Haman's face. Do you realize that up until that point, up until when the king came back in and said, will he even molest the queen while I'm just around the corner? Up until that moment, Haman still thought he was in with a chance. Because the king called him a monster. He said, this is monstrous. But the king himself was no saint, no stranger to wiping out people, nations, killing, So up until then, it says, when that word left the king's mouth, all the blood drained from Haman's face. It was at that moment Haman knew he had lost. It wasn't until that moment that Esther knew she had won. It wasn't until that moment that Esther knew she had won. And then they hung Haman on the very gallows that he had built for Mordecai. Now, here we go. The story is not over because Xerxes cannot reverse the decree. I want you to understand this. The Jewish people still had to fight. They still had to fight. Esther still fell at his feet. She said, he said, I can't reverse the decree, but you can give the Jews the right. What does it say? The king's order authorized the Jews in every city to arm and defend themselves to the death, killing anyone who threatened them or their women and children, and confiscating for themselves anything owned by their enemies. And this was sent out to everybody. And then Mordecai, came up. And then it says at the end of that chapter, at the end of chapter 8, not only that, but many non-Jews became Jews. Now it was dangerous not to be a Jew. So it says there, the city of when Mordecai is now raised up and given this, given honored and everything. and the bulletin is sent out that the Jews will get to actually defend themselves. So the king's original order cannot be reversed, but the order goes out that the Jews get to defend themselves. The Jews still have to fight. The battle is not over yet, but they've been given a chance to fight. Okay, but now the Jews they're quite happy with that, as long as they can fight, because they know God is always on their side. They're not afraid of fighting. And then it says not only that, but many non-Jews became Jews, because now it was actually dangerous not to be a Jew, because now people saw the favor that was on Jews. Then it says, and then it says, on the 13th day, the month of Adar, the king's order came into effect. This was the very day that the enemies of the Jews had planned to overpower them, but the tables were now turned. The Jews overpowered those who hated them. And they gathered in the cities. No man was able to stand up against them. Fear made cowards of them all. The Jews finished off all their enemies with the sword, and they killed the sons of Haman, but they took no plunder. So the people who rose up against them, they dealt with, but they took no plunder. They didn't take anything that wasn't theirs. The Persians had been given the go-ahead to take everything that belonged to the Jewish people, to kill the Jews and take what belonged to them. The Jewish people rose up and defended themselves against anyone who still decided to take the Jews on, but they took no plunder. They didn't take anything that didn't belong to them. And then the sons were killed and all of that kind of thing. And then Purim happened. What I want to say to you is this. If we just go back for one single second to that little digression of the two eunuchs, okay? The two eunuchs. So here we have Mordecai the queen maker, okay? And we have Mordecai who plays such an integral role in the story of Esther. And then we have Haman who starts off with wanting to kill Mordecai. And if Haman had killed Mordecai, look, we know that God has plans, you know. And if it hadn't been Mordecai, there might have been somebody else. Absolutely. If it hadn't been Esther, there might have been somebody. That's what Mordecai says, right? But look at this. The two eunuchs plot to kill Xerxes. Mordecai over here, this little digression in the middle of the story of, not in the middle, but near the beginning of the story of Esther, there's this little digression. And then it pops up later on as this point that God brings you back to. I want to say this to you ladies, because now I'm running out of time. We talk about God as an 11th hour God. How often do we call God an 11th hour God? How often do we say he comes through at the last moment, the 99th minute or whatever? I have an issue with that. I disagree, actually, vehemently with that, with calling God an 11th hour God. Because God is previous. God is previous. God already knew. He already knows. He already knew. So what that little story with the eunuchs, that was already set up so that Mordecai could overhear. He could tell Esther. Esther could tell Xerxes. That could be written in the Chronicles, so that when Haman came to take Mordecai down, that little story could come up, and Mordecai could be honored instead of killed. I'm telling you that whatever the enemy is planning to take you out prior to you stepping into your destiny, you're not hanging on by your fingernails waiting for God to come through for you at the 11th hour. God has already set the things in motion to come through to you at exactly the right time. It might feel like the 11th hour for you. It might feel like the 12th hour. It might feel like you've run out of all the hours. It is not. It is the perfect time. It might not be your perfect time. It might not be my perfect time. But it is God's perfect time. And that is the perfect time we are supposed to be trusting for. So if you're waiting on destiny, if you know that something is supposed to be happening, if you're trusting for something, if you're like, Jesus, I don't understand, ask God, say to him, God, am I missing your timing? Is this a timing issue? Is there a timing thing that why am I feeling like you're not coming through at the right time? Is there a timing thing that I am missing out on that needs to be put into place here? Because God is previous. He has already set everything up. He's put the things in motion. He's not waiting for you to breathe your last breath, to pray your last prayer, to take your last drink, to do your last, to be, okay, now I'm going to come through because I can see that she has just like done her last bit. He's not like that. He's like, I already have it all worked out. I have it laid out. I know how this is going to look. Before the foundations of the earth were laid, I knew you and what you were called to do. And I knew what the plans of the enemy against you and what he was going to try and put into place to bring that down. And I've already put those things in. I've got those things in motion. I'm using the things that other people are going to do and other plans that other people are going to make. I'm using those things. And exactly like, I think it was Jesse was quoting that, what is it, Romans 8? Is it Romans 8? I can't think now. That says God works all things together for good. What is it? God works all the, I've lost it now. But, we all say God works everything together for good. No, there's a caveat to that. There's a caveat to that verse. You don't get to just quote that verse and be like, someone's going through something and you're like, God works everything together for good. God works everything together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. He's saying that he works everything to good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So if you're walking out your purpose for him, you're walking out your destiny for him, you're walking out what he has called you to, like Esther and like Mordecai, he works everything for good because he is previous. He is previous. That doesn't mean to say that, I'm not talking about predestination. I'm going way over now, so I need to end this. I'm not talking about predestination. I'm not talking about, that there's no point in praying because God already has it all worked out and he's moving us around like pieces of chess on a chessboard. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not talking about that. We still need to intercede. We still press in. We still pray. We still trust. We still have faith. What I'm saying is that there are situations and circumstances that we think are going to wipe us out or knock us out or take us out of the running. And God is like, no, I knew that was going to happen. I am going to use that to take you, to catapult you into your destiny. Those things that people think are going to take you out, I'm going to use those very things to catapult you into your destiny. Those very things. Okay, ladies. I feel like there is a lot that has been released in this teaching, and I'm trusting that it is going to settle where it needs to settle, in the spaces that it needs to settle into, and that you will get to grasp what you need to grasp. So I just release wisdom and revelation and understanding and wise counsel over you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Just receive what you need to receive. And remember that God is for you, not against you, and he is previous. Bless you. Love you. See you on Friday.